Hello, BookTube. From both of us, right, B? I want to make a quick video to amplify something that brought me a lot of joy when I was watching BookTube today. Michael K. Vaughan, you all subscribe to his channel, I'm sure. He has given BookTube an immortal event, an event that everyone loves, June on the Range, where in June we read Westerns. And he has taken it into his crazy noggin that BookTube needs another event and that he will create one. And he has done an event that I have been waiting for. It's called Rocket Summer, named after the first part of Ray Bradbury's The Martian Chronicles. And it's going to take place in July. Its inaugural installment will be in July. Because really, a point that Vin at Revenant Reads and I and a bunch of other people have been making for years now is that don't we sort of associate, a lot of us associate reading science fiction with summer. Certainly that has been our organizing principle over at Book Trek. And that is the organizing principle here, that when it's high summer, that's when you feel like reading science fiction. A lot of us who've been reading science fiction a long time, that's when we did our reading of it. And that's what Rocket Summer is. It's a celebration of science fiction in July. I'm going to leave a link to Mike's video just in case you didn't see it. But I'm very happy about this. This blankets the summer. Summer will also be a time for other BookTube events, Jane Austen July, and Book Trek, of course. The celebration of Star Trek will be coming back, and a bunch of other stuff. But now we have big linchpin events for the 3 traditional months of summer. They are only traditional. They are not real anymore. Summer now sprawls out for 9 or 10 months of the year. But for June, we have June on the Range. Now for July, we have Rocket Summer. And then for August, of course, we have Garb August from Ollie at Criminale. And I wanted to give you just a brief breakdown here. Of course, I'm sure that Michael K. Vaughan would say that you have participated in Rocket Summer if you read classic science fiction, any work of classic science fiction, at any point during July. But there is a breakdown. There is a skeleton if you want to follow it. Week 1 would be anything, read a work of science fiction anywhere from its beginnings in the Victorian era to 1939. So the 30s, the 20s, and anything before that. Because we're talking about a seismic break here in the nature of science fiction, and we're going to work our way slowly up to that. So week 1 would be anything there in the primordial decades of science fiction. Jules Verne, H.G. Wells, all the way through to 1939, to the end of the 1930s. Then week 2 is the 1940s, week 3 is the 1950s, and week 4 is the 1960s. So Rocket Summer will take us all the way to 1970, which is pretty late when you're talking about that seismic shift in the nature of the genre of science fiction. Always I have heard said, not always, but mostly I have heard said, that the break, whatever you want to call classic science fiction to modern science fiction, happened as a result of the literary phenomenon known in the UK as the New Wave. New Wave science fiction. I know this is heretical on BookTube, but I largely hated that phenomenon. To me, it seemed like gatekeeping, the word that we now have in the 21st century. That's what it seemed like then. I didn't have that word then. But I remember thinking at the time, seeing some of these works make their way across the pond, I remember thinking at the time, wait a minute, this isn't open anymore to newcomers. You're not welcoming new readers. You're saying, this is a cool little club. Do you know the secret handshake or don't you? If you don't, screw you. And if you do, well, you're welcome to come in and try to understand me. I'm sure that is not how New Wave's fans would describe it, but that is what it looked like to me. Whether that is accurate or not, it was the arrival of New Age that often makes people will often say that's the dividing line between so-called classic science fiction. New Wave happened in the 70s, late 60s and the 70s. So that would be the rationale, I believe, behind this demarcation of Rocket Summer. That whatever happened before that could generally be classified as classic science fiction, and then whatever comes after that is the science fiction that we are more or less dealing with now, and New Wave and its descendants. But that there is a demarcation line, and it's literary. It's the arrival of New Wave science fiction. I've heard that said by lots and lots of people, and of course I agree with it on literary grounds. But I have always thought that the real thing that caused a change in science fiction, right at the same time, so we can never know for sure who's right, except Steve is always right. I have always maintained that the dividing line that stops old science fiction from just continuing is not literary. I believe it's technological. Michael K. Vaughan and I are different in a lot of ways. We are similar in a couple of key ways, and I think we share similarities with a lot of you old-time science fiction fans. But whether or not it's true for the rest of you, I know it's true for him, that Michael K. Vaughan and I have spent a lot of time on Barsoom, Edgar Rice Burroughs' fantasy version of Mars. Mike is too young, but I am old enough to remember when I not only spent lots of time, long, hot, languid summer afternoons surrounded by beagles, dreaming of Barsoom, dreaming of the world of fantasy that John Carter inhabits, and also thinking it might be out there somewhere. The thing that stopped me from doing that, the thing that stopped the whole world from doing that, and most importantly, the thing that changed science fiction, was the technology that proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that that world never existed. That world is not out there. The Viking probes in the 70s, we sent probes to the planet Mars. They showed beyond a shadow of a doubt that it is a radiation-soaked, freezing cold, barren wasteland. Percival Lowell? No. John Carter? No. There is no life on Mars. There hasn't been life on Mars in millions and millions and millions of years. And probably, when there was, it was microbial. Mars is not a tectonically active planet. So if it had been technological, if there had been vast cities ruled over by jetacks, we would see it. We would see some evidence of that. There isn't any evidence of that. Probably if there was life on Mars, it was microbial. Probably it was microbial. Probably there was life on at one point, a long, long, long time ago. Mars was a blue ocean world. If you'd have been able to look through a telescope then, if you dodged velociraptors long enough to look through a telescope, you would have seen a blue and green world, very much like Earth. But not anymore. Science fiction changed when probes from Earth started sending back pictures of alien worlds. Our only alien worlds. The only alien worlds we're ever going to get any first-hand telemetry from. Mars and Venus. Once those probes started sending back indisputable factual information, science fiction as a genre always prided itself on, this is not science that exists, but it could be. I'm being scrupulous to the laws of physics, to the laws of extrapolation. I pride myself on that, and so do all my other futurists. So do all my other scientific fiction writers. Science romance writers. We all pride ourselves, we're writing these wild things, but we pride ourselves on their scientific viability. Well, when pictures start coming back from Mars, you have to change the game. You have to change what you're doing. Science fiction has to become psychedelic. It has to become inner worlds. It has to become alternate dimensions. It has to become faster than light travel and other worlds far beyond what we know for a fact. You can't write a fantasy set on Mars anymore. You can't do it. What other fantasies are ruled out? None. You could write a Tolkien-esque rural epic fantasy easily today. Plenty of people do it. They're not ruled out. Science fiction as a genre has the unique distinction of having been told by the scientific community, the books you wrote 10 years ago, they were never possible. They certainly aren't possible. If you write a science fiction story in which someone has a domed city and they're walking around in their shirt sleeves on the surface of Mars, we don't know what you're writing, but it's not science anymore. It's not based on science anymore. I firmly believe that it was those probes of Mars that made the change we're talking about. But whether you think it was the New Wave or whether you think it was the Viking probes, it still changed. Science fiction still changed. The 70s saw that change in. And that is when, typical of Michael K. Vaughan's channel, that is when we stopped paying any attention. So we are only talking about the good oldie type stuff. So I hope you will join in. I am overjoyed about this. I am just deciding what I want to do. I think I probably want to overdose on old science fiction. I think I probably want to do that. I'm far more interested in week 2 and week 3, the 40s and the 50s. I'm far more interested in that. The 60s, I was already seeing it change, and I wasn't a big fan of the 60s anyway. And the early parts of science fiction, I spent a lot of time on Barsoom. I will probably not be able to resist the urge to reread an Edgar Rice Burroughs novel. Probably I won't be able to resist that urge. But the 40s and the 50s, I have a lot of books. There are a lot of candidates. Oh my, I'm so looking forward to Rocket Summer. I hope you are too. Let's read a whole bunch of cheesy and sometimes not, sometimes very good, old science fiction in the heart of summer. Let's do that together. I just wanted to do this video. I'm not amplifying anything that Mike does because his channel is much bigger than mine, thankfully. At long last, his channel is much bigger than mine, as it should be. But just in case you didn't see his video. Ordinarily, I say that with a lot more conviction. In this case, the conviction is kind of weak because I think pretty much everyone watches the two of us. But if you didn't see it, if you somehow missed his video, I'll leave a link to it. You should strongly consider adding some classic science fiction to your diet this summer. But anyway, I'm going to wrap this up for now, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.